Hello there, welcome to In the Studio. We've arrived at the final video of this three-part mini-series focusing on the low end. So just a quick recap. In the first video, I processed and layered a kick. In the second video, I programmed a sustained bass line and added some low percussion, and then we treated those sounds. In this video, I'm going to button up a few details as far as the mixing goes. Now, I did do some mixing as I went along, but there's still a few things I want to finish. So let's get to it. Here's just a quick refresher on what we have so far. Okay, so let's dive in and get going here. Let's look at the kick and the bass first. But firstly, just the kick. I think I can roll some of the low end off even more here. Yeah. So I'm just going to push this up to around 40 hertz. Okay, and the next thing I want to do is scoop some of the low mids out of the kick. So I'm going to take this guy here and I'll just move this down to around 200 hertz. It's a good general area. And I'm just going to dip this out right around 6 dB, I think. And doing this is going to allow the bass to have a little bit more space because the bass has a lot of action right there in the 200 hertz area. And also, if I was, if this was a full track with, synths and vocals and whatever, then that's just an area where there's lots of overlapping sounds. So I find scooping a little bit out of the kick right there really helps those elements just gel together a little bit better. But in this case, it's going to really allow the bass to come through a little bit more clean. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is actually take a little bit more of the mid-range out of the kick. This is more of a personal preference, but I'm going to take this band here. We'll go to around 600, 650 or so. And take a little bit out of the kick, or the kick here as well. Yeah. I mean, especially if I had more elements going, this would really be noticeable, but that's just, it is kind of a personal preference. I like to scoop some of the mid-range out of the kick and allow, a little bit of extra space for other elements that occupy that area to come through. But I mean, probably making a little bit of space for the top end of the bass, especially if we open up the filter on the bass. But I think that's okay for the kick for now. Now let's head over to the bass. We already added an EQ here, but I think we can take a little bit more of the low end off the bass. Now in this particular instance, I want to let the kick have the priority in the low end. So I'm going to make a little extra space for the low end of the kick by rolling more of the low end off the bass. So I'm just going to have a little play here with the cutoff point and see if we can get something that sounds a little bit cleaner. I think 60 hertz in that area is a good general spot. You can really hear when I bypass this how congested the low end is. The bass and the kick are really fighting without the EQ on at all. Yeah, that's a lot better. Now, setting these low cuts and these EQ points on the kick and the bass is something that I always end up adjusting a few times when I'm actually doing a mix down for real. You know, after I listen to the track on as many playback systems as I have available to me, I always, you know, take down notes and see if, you know, if the bass sounds too loud on any one of those, or if I feel like I need to make adjustments. I just make adjustments on the low end, especially the EQ positions and cuts, until I'm happy with how that track sounds on all the different playback systems. I kind of get a good, you know, happy average where it sounds good on all the playback systems. And sometimes that takes multiple tweaks to get it right. So just wanted to mention that, but I think for the sake of the video, around 60 hertz is a little bit better than where we had it. So that's good. Let's move on. I'm actually going to add a little bit of stereo widening to the bass here. Not a lot, but a little bit. That's too much. Somewhere around there. Nothing extreme, it's pretty subtle, but you can see what's happening if I pull up this little imager plugin. And that's just gonna spread the bass out a little bit and kind of have it wrap around the kick. And that's just going to separate those two elements a little bit more and give a little bit more space for each one. Now, if later on down the line, I thought that, you know, the bass is a little bit too wide in the very low end, I could always mono everything below a certain frequency. Super easy. You know, there's lots of Brainworks plugins that do this. The Isotope Ozone Imager does that, the one with the multi-band capabilities. I'm sure there's plenty of other plugins that will allow you to do that. Or you can also split the bass into multiple frequency bands. So for instance, say I wanted to keep the low end mono and not apply the dimension expander. I can make a copy of the bass. On one of the basses, I'll low pass it all the way down to, let's say, 150, for instance. And then on the other bass, I'll do the opposite, high pass up to 150. And then that will allow me to keep the low bass clean with no spatial effects. And then I could apply the dimension expander to the upper bass. So that is an option as well. For the sake of the video, I'm not going to do that here. I don't think it's a huge issue because I'm not really pushing this too much. But I just wanted to mention that. So yeah, I'm going to add a little bit of stereo spread here. Just again, kind of wrapping the bass around the kick, which is mono straight down the middle. Okay, so let's move on. let's head over to the tom here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a low cut on this. Okay, so let's just, I'm going to mute the bass for a second. I'm just going to start a little extreme and then dial it back. Yeah, just everything below around 145, 150, I just don't necessarily need. So just rolling off any stray frequencies that might be down there and conflicting with the bass and the kick. So I'm also going to head into the piano roll on the tom, because right now it's just playing straight down the middle. And it's mono, as you can see, which is fine. But I just want to maybe give it a little bit of movement and separate it a little bit from the kick in the bass by just adding some panning here inside the piano roll. Even though it's not playing on the beats exactly with the kick, we're still getting a little overlap with the tail of the tom that is colliding with the kick. So let's just move it off that center line. So I'll just go like a left, right. Something like this. Just to move it around a little bit. Okay, and let's head over to the conga. I'm going to do the same thing here with the EQ on this. Just going to roll away any frequencies that I don't need on the low end. So again, I'm going to start a little bit extreme and then dial it back. Yeah, right around 200. Cool. And then this one I'm just going to kick over to the right a little bit. Okay, and then you can see here I made a couple of triggers for the conga and the tom, which are essentially just audio bounces of these two little parts, which I'm going to use for triggers because they're kind of clashing a little bit with the bass. So let's deal with the tom first. First, I'm going to take these audio triggers and just side chain them to the bass. I mean, these aren't being, we're not hearing these sounds. They're not routed to the output. We're just using them as a trigger. And then on the bass, actually, first I just want to show you here. So the fundamental of this tom is right around the 145. You can see here, yeah, let's call it 146. And if we head over to the bass, you can see it's clashing right here with this note, this D note here. So I want to duck the bass a little bit to allow those toms to come through a little bit more clearly, but I don't want to duck the whole, I don't want to duck the entire volume of the bass. I only want to duck the specific frequency that I need to duck, which is around 146. So I'm going to use dynamic EQ for that, which I could do within this TRD Nova EQ. So let's head to this little wrench tab here, and then under the processing tab, I'm going to select my tom trig here, and then we're going to select external sidechain up here, and then on this band I'm going to set the frequency to 146, and we'll pull back the threshold. I'll keep the ratio at 2. That should be fine. I'll turn the attack all the way in. I want it to react immediately, and we'll dial in the release in a second. But let's just pull back on this threshold, see if we get some movement here. Okay. Just dial that back. It was a little extreme at first, but you can see that that's ducking our conflicting frequency here at 146 on the bass when that tom is playing, allowing that tom to have its brief little moment. And let's adjust the release a little bit. Without it. Let's see if I can. That's definitely allowing those toms to come through a little bit more clearly, I think. And then we could just do the same thing for the conga. So I'm just going to add another instance of this TRD Nova here. And then, excuse me, on this one we'll do the same thing. Go to the processing tab here. We'll select the conga trig for this one. And the conga, remember, is playing the G note, so it's hitting right at 200 hertz. Just check that. Right there at, well, we'll call it 1. Yeah, it's a little bit under 200, so we'll call it 194. Close enough. And then on the bass, we have, again, a conflicting frequency here. So I just want to do the same thing, duck that problem frequency out on the bass when that conga is playing. So let's do it. So we already selected our conga here. So let's set this to 194. pull back on the threshold for now. Again, pull the attack all the way in. I'll increase the Q. Oh, we need to select external sidechain. There we go. Something like that. Without it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you know, ducking the bass in just that one specific frequency that we need ducked, not the whole entire bass, not the entire volume when that conga's playing. So we have a little bit more clarity there as well. So that is all of the mixing details that I wanted to finish up in this video. So that's going to be it. I hope you enjoyed this little mixing series, you know, layering, processing a kick, programming a bass and some percussion, focused on low end. I hope you know, were able to take something away from this. Please feel free to hit me up with any questions, comments. Love to hear from everyone, and I will catch you soon. Cheers.